Hey everybody, so for today I'm going to be posting a very quick short tutorial on using ElevenLabs and building out your first voice agent. So whenever you first initially log into ElevenLabs, you'll be brought to your home screen. Now I am in the agents platform. There's also this creative platform, but you want to make sure that you are in the agents platform. Whenever you go into the agents platform, as you can see, the home screen will bring you to here. This is going to basically just be all of your statistics for all of the calls that have been made. You can filter that down by agent. As you can see, I have a couple here. You can also do specific time frames, week, day, month. I typically keep mine at months so I can keep track of my costs. I'll show you your success rate here. And the language that the languages that have been used. I don't want to get too deep into this, as again, this is just kind of your home dashboard, right? So over here on the left hand side, you're going to first click on agents. When you click on agents, it's going to bring up any of the agents that you've already used here, but for this case, we're just going to click new agent. Now here you're going to have the option of choosing between a blank agent, personal assistant, business agent. They give you a couple pre-made options here, or you can create your own. So again, because we're just doing a very simple agent, we'll just go here and we'll say personal agent. And then here it's going to give you multiple use cases. So depending on your use case will determine which one you want to use here. So for today's case, we're just going to say personal assistant. You can name your agent personal assistant test tutorial. Let's do tutorial. Okay. And then here you're going to tell the model what you want your agent to accomplish. So for this, we're just going to say, I would like you to be able to we'll say handle incoming calls and book meeting on my calendar. Okay, so this will require Zapier. However, again, we're not really going to get into that too much, not in this video anyway. If you'd like to see how all of that works, leave a like or comment and let me know, and I will do a video on that as well. All right, so here we are. This is going to be your agent building page, right? So as you can see here, this is your assistant. You can rename it through here. You have a couple tabs up here. So this first section is where you're going to choose your agent language. As you can see, there's quite a few languages here. So the chances of you having your language here is very high. Here you can select any additional languages. So if you're in an area that speaks a lot of Spanish or German or French or Japanese, Portuguese, anything like that, you can select those additional languages here. For now, again, we're going to keep it simple. We're just going to stick with English. So here you're going to have your first message. This will be the first thing that your agent says whenever somebody calls the number. Right, so hi, I'm here to help manage your calls and schedule meetings for you. So let's say, hello, thank you for calling. Andrew, what can I help you with today? All right, if you'd like to not allow the caller to interrupt your agent during this first message, you can just check this box. You're also able to add variables here which again, we're not really going to get into that today. This is basically just a quick setup, right? So here, as you can see, it's already been pre-filled. So these headers here, you're going to want to stick with kind of that same format that's here. Again, you can go in and make changes and whatnot. As you can see, there's the tools that they have access to here, guardrails, step by step on how to handle incoming calls, right? And again, you can go in and change all of this. This is kind of something that you'd want to experiment with, right? You can also allow AI to customize this a little bit more simply by explaining what you're trying to build out here, right? All right, so down into dynamic variables. So these are variables these a lot of times are going to be your tools, right? You do have a tools section later on. However, this is going to allow you to add in any variables into here, right? So if you wanted to, I don't know, say get the caller's phone number, email, name, you could put those in as variables in here, and then you'd be able to put in placeholder values here, and these would be updated as the agent talks to the caller then. All right, here is the LLM section. This is where you're going to choose your model. Previously, I had been using GPT-5 and GPT. Personally, I'm very partial to GPT-5. However, I have been playing with this GLM 4.5 Air, and so far it seems to be doing really, really well. I've been very impressed with the results from this so far, and this is one that is directly through ElevenLabs. Here you can set your backup LLMs in case this one fails. Usually I just go with the default. You can also do custom, right? So you can order these however you'd like in case the first one fails, or you can disable it. All right, reasoning effort. So this is going to be how much reasoning your model uses, right? Right now it's set to none. Usually I go with low, and low so far seems to be working very well. I haven't really run into any issues with that. High does take considerably longer for the agent to answer back, so I probably wouldn't recommend that unless you're doing maybe like tutoring or you're building out an agent for something similar to that. Temperature. So this is your randomness, essentially, of the responses that your agent's going to give, right? So the higher this is, the more creative they're going to be. Typically, I found that keeping this between 0.25 and 0.3 seems to give the best results. Anything higher than that, and you start to things can be a little interesting. I wouldn't recommend over 0.5 unless, this is more of just like a chat bot or someone to chat with. Then, maybe you do want to set it a little higher here. But for now, we'll stick with the 0.25. Again, I think 0.25 or 0.3 is typically going to be the setting that you would want to use here in most use cases. Here you can limit your token usage. Typically, you just want to leave this at -1, which for simplicity we're going to do today. Here you have the knowledge base, right? So this is where you're going to add in websites or any specific information that the agent would need to know to answer questions for you, right? So go to add document. Now, as you can see here, I've got quite a few different files, different knowledge bases, different websites, right? So in this knowledge base, you can add either a URL, just like a doc file, Microsoft Word file. You can also create text, right? Which is basically, it just opens up something similar to Notepad, and you just type in what you needed to know, right? And here you're going to have the tools, right? This tools section, with one of their somewhat recent updates, they ended up making these all toggle, which is super helpful if you're brand new to this. So typically the tools that I'm always going to turn on, end conversation. This allows your agent to hang up the call after the call is finished. You've also got detect language. Now for detect language, that you don't necessarily need on unless you expect someone to be calling in that may speak another language than the primary one that you had selected above. Skip turn, I'll usually put this on as well. This will allow the agent to wait for a response. If the caller says, hey, can you give me a minute? I just need to think about it. The agent will then skip its turn. It will wait, and it will wait until it receives a response from the caller. Transfer to agent, I haven't really used this, to be honest, but this would give you the ability to transfer, say, from an agent that you may have built that does, I don't know, sales calls, right? You'd give it the ability to transfer it to, say, then a closing agent, right? Again, I don't typically use this, only because for my use cases, one agent is enough. So let's see. You've also got the transfer to number, which will give you the ability to essentially forward a call to a human, right? This one I do keep on. Whenever you turn it on, you'll be brought to this configuration screen. You just want to leave the name the same. The description's fine to leave the same. If you want to see what it says, you can hit the show default button that was here. And to go back, you just hit restore original. And this will basically explain to you when this transfer to number tool would actually be used, right? You can also disable interruptions while the tool is running. Typically, I don't do that. You can add your own rules for human transfer rules, but again, that's getting a lot more complex. So we can just do this for now, leave this the same. Yes. So again, here you would, this is the phone number that you would be then forwarding to, right? But again, we're not going to get into this. All right, play keypad touch tone. So this one I don't use either. It does, however, give the agent the ability to use the keypad touch tones during a phone call, which again, depending on your use case, you may or may not want to use. Voicemail detection. This is going to be more for your outbound calls. I have used it on one of my agents, as one is an outbound call agent. However, this is something that, again, depending on your use case, you may or may not want to have on. And then just below your preset tools, you also have custom tools. So you can go in, you can add your own tool. As you can see, I have a couple tools already set up here. Custom MCP servers. Again, we're not going to worry about that right now. But this is where I would add in my servers from Zapier, right? And that gives my agent access to multiple other tools then that are available within Zapier. Here you can also add any workspace authorization connections or authentication connections. I apologize. This will be used across every single one of your agents. So if you have something that you use often, you can go ahead and just add that in here. That way you don't have to continuously repeat it across your agents. All right, so that's pretty much everything in the agent tab, right? The workflow tab, they just added this here probably about a month or two ago. I really like this workflow tab. This allows you to completely control your conversation flow, right? Again, I'm not going to get into that right now, as that's not something you necessarily need to just set your agent up. Within the voice tab, here you can select your voice. Here's one that I created. I'm gonna go ahead and select that one. You can also...
Hello, thanks for calling. My name is Sarah. How can I help you today?
There you go. So you can also sample that. Multi-voice support. So if you wanted to use different characters, right, transfer to another agent, whatnot, you wanted to make it sound like it was being transferred to somebody else, you could use this to add a second voice. This is your model family used for your text-to-speech. Typically, I use 11 Flash as that is the fastest. You can also use Turbo. Again, I'm not going to get into that too heavily right now because, again, this is a beginner tutorial. You're going to have your text-to-speech output format, right? So this, you can leave it here. This will make it sound like an actual telephone call. And this is your this is going to be your highest quality. However, again, I typically use this as I think it does sound better and more human-like. Pronunciation dictionaries. Again, not really going to get into that. That's not something, again, that I really use a whole lot. That'd be, though, for pronunciation, right? Just to make sure that harder words for the agent to pronounce, just to make sure that they are actually pronouncing them correctly. All right, I'm going to move on to optimize streaming latency. So this is where you're going to set, let me show you here, your latency optimization options, right? So typically I go with 2 to 3. You can go 4, but with 4, I've noticed that it does not like to say dates correctly. It does not like to get numbers correct. So typically I would say 2 to 3. You're still going to get very, very good results out of both of those. Stability. So this is going to determine how much emotion is in your agent's voice, right? So if you set it higher, say like 0.7, 0.75, it's going to be very consistent. However, it will make it sound monotone at some point. It's going to sound much more monotone once you really hit anything above 0.7 or so, 0.75. Usually I keep mine right around 0.3 to 0.4. And I feel like that typically gets your best results. 0.3 will give you a little bit more expression, and I haven't really had an issue with any instabilities in that. Occasionally it does make your agent sound very excited if that's what you're going with. So that's something that, again, you'll kind of want to play around with depending on your use case. Same with speed. Speed default is just at 1. Typically, I go to about 1.05. That seems to be a pretty natural speaking speed. Anything higher than that, yeah, you get a very, very fast talker. Anything above, I'd say 1.1 to 1.15, your agent's going to be speaking very quickly. Anything under 1, I feel like is very slow and it kind of drags things out. I probably would not recommend that. Maybe there's a use case where you would need that, but in general, I feel like you want to keep this between 1 and I'd say 1.1 at the very highest. All right, and then the last section here in this tab is the similarity. This is going to boost the, as you can see here, the clarity and consistency of the voice. By default, it's set to 0.8. Now with this, anything higher than that, and it you may end up with your agent sounding like the spawn of Satan. So typically I don't recommend going higher than the 0.8. I usually leave mine right around 0.7 to 0.75. We'll go with 0.75 for today. We can just save those changes. Oh, it's going to want me to do that. Okay, got ya. We're not going to do that just quite yet. Okay, so that covered the voice tab. The analysis tab, this is where you can add different criteria to evaluate your conversations against, right? So this is something that, again, you can add and customize to your specific use case. Data collection, this is going to be like if you wanted to extract, say, their name, email, and phone number from the transcripts. You can add those in here and your agent will automatically do that. Okay, here's your testing. Again, this is another new feature that was just added in not too long ago with the workflows. Right now for this, because again, it's a very basic agent, we don't really need to do any testing. Again, if you'd like me to do a video on this, I'd be more than happy to do so. They do also have a little tutorial here that you could watch. All right. Security. The security tab, again, this is going to be very use case based. So here you have your authentication, right? So this would require a user to authenticate before it connects to the agent, which that again is going to depend on your use case and whether, well, and really what kind of agent that you're trying to build out, right? And the purpose of that agent. Here you have your allow list. This will be the hosts that can connect to the agent. Again, not super important right now as we are just building out a very, very basic agent. Overrides. Okay, so for the overrides, if you want your agent to be multilingual, you will have to check this agent language toggle. That should be on. That way it gives the agent the ability to override its typical or its standard language and switch to the language of the caller. First message, again, pretty self-explanatory. This would allow the agent to override your first message, your system prompt. I typically don't check this one. Again, though, that's going to depend on use case. If you want it to be very creative, you could go ahead and toggle that on. LLM, that will allow the client to use a different large language model, right? So give it the ability to switch, say, between Gemini and Claude or Claude and GPT-5. Those are just some very basic examples. Voice. So this is going to allow it to override the voice that you have given it. Again, I would not recommend that. Depending on use case, if you want to have it be able to transfer to another agent, then this would be something that you'd want to toggle on. Or if you wanted to use multiple characters within the same agent, this again would be something you'd want to toggle on. Voice speed, again, I usually leave that alone. There's typically no reason to override the voice speed. And with stability and similarity, there's typically no reason to override those. Then this text only, if you have this toggled on, it would allow the client then to be able to understand text messages and switch to essentially text only, where it's no longer trying to do text to speech. It's just processing whatever information you are supplying it with and essentially working as a chat bot, right? So fetch initiation client data from webhook. Again, we're not going to get into that today. This would be if you had, I don't know, you wanted it to hit a specific webhook to pull in some sort of data. You could use this so that every time a call comes in, it automatically pulls that information. Post-call webhook, again, kind of similar, except this would be after the call. It would hit this point, right? And then you could say have something set up in Zapier where after the call, it would hit a webhook that would then complete a certain action, right? Such as sending out an email or sending out a text message to their WhatsApp number. Just a couple examples there. All right, so then this last section here, enable bursting. So this would allow your agent to exceed your workspace subscription concurrency limit, right? So this, I haven't ran into where my agents actually had to use this yet. This would be more so once you get into high call volumes, and this may be something that would be used for that particular use case. And with concurrent calls limit, This is the maximum number of concurrent calls allowed. -1 just means that there is no limit, right? So you can have as many concurrent calls as your agent could handle. Daily calls limit, so pretty self-explanatory. This sets how many calls your agent can take per day. Right now it's set to 100,000. That is the default setting. Okay, then we're going to come over here into advanced. In advanced, you have your turn timeout. So this just tells the agent, hey, after however many seconds, the caller not speaking, go ahead and time out and say something to make sure that the caller is still with you. If you set this to -1, as it shows here, it means that the agent is never going to time out and will simply wait for the caller to say something. And typically 7 seconds seems to be a pretty good timeout. Eagerness, this again was another category that was added recently. Usually I just keep mine at normal. Normal just means they're going to wait, a very average amount of time, couple seconds, to respond to, say, a question or a statement that the caller is making. If you set this to eager, they do respond faster. However, if the caller had just simply paused to say take a breath, then wanted to continue, you're going to find where your agent is getting interrupted a lot, which is not, very user friendly. I haven't really tried that because, again, normal seems to work just fine for most use cases. All right, silence end call timeout. So this will be the maximum number of seconds since the user last spoke. So this, typically I'll set this to 10 seconds. That way, if the user hasn't spoke within 10 seconds, the agent will automatically end the call. And this is good to help you not run up, say, a 20-minute phone call because you got placed on hold, or something came up and they totally forgot they were on the phone with you, right? You don't want to be burning up your credits on here because of someone not hanging up, right? Typically, again, 10 seconds seems to be pretty reasonable. That would be adjusted for your particular use case, though. Soft timeout, so this is going to be how many seconds before returning a message while the agent thinks, right? So this, again, the default is that it is disabled. This would determine, how long your agent's going to wait while it's thinking about, say, an answer to a question or trying to retrieve information because it's calling tool. And then, as you can see here, provides immediate feedback during longer responses, right? So, again, not something that my use cases that I've really had to use yet. And then here you can just set the message that you would like it to relay to the caller, right? Again, fully customizable. Max conversation duration, typically 600 seconds seems to be more than what I need, but just in case those conversations do run a little bit longer, this will give you 10 minutes of time on each call before the call will terminate. Keywords, again, this is not something that I've really used and that we're not going to use today, but just know that it does exist. This just takes essentially CSVs, comma separated values. Take a list of keywords that would then have a much higher likelihood of being predicted correctly by the LLM. Chat mode, text only. Again, this is where you'd have a conversational agent that doesn't do any of the text to speech or speech to text. It simply would act as a chatbot, right? Here's your user input audio format. So this would be used for the speech recommendation. As you can see, this one's recommended. This one is what I typically use for telephone. Again, for a simple agent, I would just stick with the recommended. You have some time to play around with that. Client events, again, not going to get into this really today. So this you are typically going to just leave alone and not really play with this because the default settings are good for most use cases. Okay, then down here you have your privacy settings, right? So would you like your agent to store the call audio? Also have 0 retention mode, right? So again, I probably wouldn't have this turned on as it does make things difficult when you run into issues. This would be using post-call webhooks like we had talked about earlier to retrieve any information about the call instead of having it stored through ElevenLabs. Then down here you have your conversations retention period. This you can just set a maximum number of days to keep your conversations for. -1 just means that it keeps them forever. If you come in here though and you change this to say 30, you'll see that you do get a couple other options. After 30 days, it would just delete the transcript and delete the audio, right? But again, for today, we're simply going to use -1 so that it holds those conversations forever. Okay, and then finally, the last section here. Now, this is if you're going to be wanting to implement this into a website setup, right, to act as a chat bot. If you remember MySpace, there's a lot of this where you'd copy this, paste it into your MySpace page, right, and you could change your background, you could change your music, you could change all that, right? This is essentially the same thing where it embeds this little chat widget here. You have feedback collection, right? So you have multiple options here. Either turn it off. You can have it during conversation, which is what I typically keep that on, or you could go with end of conversation. For during conversation, just so we're getting as much feedback as possible, as quickly as possible. All right, so down here, this is dealing with your widget again, chat mode, right, which you want to have on. You can have it set to send text while on call. You can do real-time transcripts of the call, which I really like that feature. Don't currently have that on, obviously for this basic setup. But just know that that is something that is very helpful, especially if you need to see how your calls are progressing in real time. There's also a language drop down here. If you were going to start a chat, you can select a different language, and then there's a mute button. You can also set your expanded behavior, right? So again, this is referring to this little widget here. Start collapsed, you can start it expanded to where it will start expanded already or always expanded, right? Again, for simplicity, this is kind of more of just a bonus thing that you should be aware of at least. Here's your appearance, full, compact, right? So this just changes your size of this here. Compact, tiny, right? Usually I stick with compact. You can choose your placement, top left, top, right? This is where it's going to go then within the website. You can choose an avatar. You can use either images from the internet. You can do a little orb like this, as you can see here, or you can also upload your own image to where image will then appear in that orb. All right. Again, a bunch of different settings for the widgets, but we're not going to get into that today. This is just terms and conditions, right? Just saying that basically your conversation will be stored. And then here's a shareable link so that you could share this with friends, workers, anyone that may want to see this in action, right? All right, so real quick, we're going to do a quick demo here. So we're going to come over to our agent. And again, if you hit save and have any issues, it will automatically bring you to those issues. So here, calendar tool, right? To be honest, we don't even need those in here. Again, I know I said to have it set up for a calendar, but for simplicity, we are not going to do that today. Okay. Tools, I'm going to say, we're just going to pull that out because again, we're keeping this very, very, very simple. All right, I'll hit save. Oh, my apologies. Back in the widget. And it wanted some sort of image here. Okay. Save. All right, there we go. So now, if you'd like to test it, come up here, test your agent. All right, so then here it's going to, and this is the testing agent. Hi, what is your role here? All right. I would like to see about setting up a meeting. All right. Okay, so then as you can see, it gives you very timely responses. And again, this is simply the testing, right? So let's come back here. We'll turn those off. Oh, my apologies. Okay, so we're going to turn text only off. Save. Come into the widget. Turn chat mode off. Save. Okay, now this will allow your widget then to handle calls. Yep. So this is, again, this is a very, very, very basic agent. What I will do here, I'm going to go to an agent that I've already built out, so you can kind of, just so you can kind of get an idea of how this all works, right? So go into my outbound sales, as you can see, a ton of different languages, my initial message, my prompts. All right, that's a little bit longer. Dynamic variables, right? So these are things that I'd want to extract. LM setup. Again, reasoning effort is low. Temperature I have 0.25. Right, my knowledge base is in here. All right, so then we'll go to test.
Hello, how are you today?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you?
Great to hear. I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for asking. I'm Sarah with Inked AI. We help real estate agents like yourself automate lead qualification and appointment booking through intelligent voice agents. Are you currently handling calls and scheduling showings for your real estate business?
I am actually, yeah.
That's great. Are you finding it challenging to keep up with all the calls and scheduling, especially during busy times or after hours?
Oh yeah. I usually miss, oh God, probably 5 to 8 calls per day.
Missing 5 to 8 calls per day is definitely challenging. That's a lot of potential leads slipping through the cracks. Inked AI actually helps agents capture those missed calls by answering every call instantly, qualifying buyers and renters automatically, and booking showings directly into your calendar. It works 24/7, so you never miss another lead again. Would you be open to seeing a quick demo with Andrew, our founder? He could show you exactly how it works and answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, sure. That sounds pretty good.
Perfect. I'm excited to show you how Inked AI can help you capture those missed calls. When would be a good time for you to schedule a quick 15-minute demo with Andrew? You can pick any time that works best for you. Morning, afternoon, whenever is convenient.
How about Monday at...
Great! Let me set up a demo for you with Andrew on Monday at 3 p.m. Perfect. I've got you scheduled for a demo with Andrew on Monday at 3 p.m. You'll receive a confirmation email shortly with all the details. If you need to reschedule or have any questions before then, just let me know. Is there anything else I can help you with today?
Nope, that's everything. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. I'm really looking forward to showing you how Inked AI can help you capture those missed calls and save you time. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you on Monday.
Thank you, you too. Bye. Okay, so as you can see, that was a quick little of an agent that I already have set up. Now I do have that one set up for outbound, but as you can see, it can also handle inbound calls. And with that, I think I'm going to cut the video for today. Let me know down in the comments if you would like me to get a little more in depth with this. If you'd like me to kind of do a longer video on anything you may be interested in within the conversational agent space. If you liked it, leave me a like, give me a comment below, subscribe, and have a good day, everybody.